not the kind of work I do. It's just too hot and you're working too hard. You don't want to eat anything. You feel like you throw up if you did.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, you get like nuts and stuff.
If I put anything in my stomach if I put anything in my stomach at like 2:30 or 2 o'clock, I get nauseous.
You want a cup of coffee?
No, I'm okay.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm not sleepy tired. I'm just wore out tired.
I hear you.
Is that all right if I kick on the AC? It's a little much.
Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
They're on that side down in the. Why is there?
Hi, Honda.
Okay, you need to go sit down. No, Ariel cannot.
Got home and Linda made dinner, so that was
Oh,
nice.
that's nice. She feeling better? I texted her.
Yeah, I think she is.
Poor girl.
I asked her if she was feeling better because she was in their kitchen making dinner, and I was like, "You gotta be feeling better." And she goes, "Yeah." So hopefully she
That's
passed
good.
it.
She said, I think Ariel texted her for me. She's a lot more. Karen, you just stood right in front of me. I'm trying to talk to you.
I'm going to sit down.
Quickly.
Just pull my seat.
Thank you. I know when somebody's talking, you can wait it. You know. And she said that she felt like it was gonna. She was almost done or something.
Good. Boys got their hair cut, huh?
Yeah, I went to Heather's today. I got a good chance to get to visit with her.
That's good. I was kind of thinking I was gonna have to come up on Sunday.
Yeah, it was getting. Well, Yadarelli hadn't got his done, so.
Oh, you know, also
He's
needs his done?
he's at the cabin, so
Oh, okay.
it might be good
I
to
can
get
cut
him.
his. Yeah.
I think they're going up to the cabin this weekend. Are you going with them?
Huh?
The cabin this weekend?
That would be
you
fun.
Take the bus.
If I'm not completely wore out.
Yeah. Well, if you just go up there and see it the whole time, I understand.
Well, we have basically a half day tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
So, and they're buying pizza, but I don't know. It never fails. They order pizza and it's all got sausage and pepperoni.
Yeah, they're just like, just pick it off. I'm like,
Sorry.
Yeah, they know I won't eat it if it has sausage and
I
pepperoni on
need
it.
some space.
just tell them to get you a,
They
just
usually get a vegetarian
like a
pizza.
cheese one or something.
They'll usually get like a vegetarian pizza, which I like those.
Uh-huh.
But
Did you
I'm a
do
little
that?
leery now because if they order from like Domino's or something, the research I did on Domino's, they've said there's rennet in their cheese, and they don't know what cheeses have rennet and which ones don't, and it comes from, and they specifically said it comes from pork.
Huh, that's interesting. Usually, in the United States,
That's
very,
what I
very,
thought
very,
too.
very few of it.
And I was reading it, and somebody sent a letter to Domino's to find out if their cheese had rennet in it, and they said yes, it did. Some of it does, not all of it.
Oh,
It just
yeah.
depends on their supplier.
But what kind of rennet?
And then they said, and then
Pork.
the second
Some of
part
them.
of it was, if it has rennet, does it have pork in it? And they said yes, definitely. Some of our suppliers have pork rennet in their cheese.
Oh, interesting.
So you gotta watch. I wouldn't eat Domino's.
Hey, I got your techelet. Before I forget, the last time you've been here, I had it, like, oh, I could give it to him, and then I got you're gone before I could give it to you. Great. Yeah.
Hey, I was gone over last week taking my youngest daughter to college.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So here is so you have the thick one, you have the thin one.
Yeah, but I'm not going with them.
Okay, great. And then we
What's that?
I'm not gonna go with them up to the cabin.
You're not.
No, I think
He's taking the boat out.
well, he's got to fix the deck first, so it might not be something you want to do because you'll get stuck in a project. But
What's wrong with the deck? I mean, there's not that much to it.
it came attached from the wall,
Oh no.
so it's dipping, right by the door.
Thought he
Oh,
jacked
that's
it
not
up.
We jacked it up with the jack, so you can't really tell as much.
Right.
But my stepdad wants that to be, if we can fix it. So
Yeah.
his plan is to go up there and do that as a priority.
That makes sense. Yeah.
maybe that
come
Oh,
back
that shouldn't take
at the
very
latest
long.
on Monday because.
And that's what you said with the break.
Well, and Monday's a holiday, so.
Yeah, Monday, I'm gonna do Gideon's birthday at 5, but I was thinking I could stay home. I wanted to work on my plan for homeschooling this year. And
That's a fancy new book.
It's not that good.
Well, it's
I
fancy.
should go get this paper and take it to the color.
You hearing something?
What?
Shalom,
At,
how are you?
my dear. Mark?
10.5-hour hard work day. I think I drained close to 40 refrigerators.
Oh,
I
wow.
knocked out about 5 or 6 cars, and then I had this big, huge, like, you know those man bucket trucks, those man lift trucks that the electricians use? We had one of those come in, and I had to put that up on a rack, and a special rack that we have for bigger trucks to drain that.
Oh, wow.
And then like shoveled for half the day, because we've got to get all the dirt up around all the cracks and everything.
And the heat, 0.
And when we're shoveling, most of the time it's not dirt. It's
Nehemiah,
It's metal.
Baruch, Gidon.
They're done.
Oh, you're right there. I didn't see you. Sorry.
Shoveling metal is the hardest thing in the world to shovel.
My haircut.
They look a lot better, huh?
I'd shovel dirt all day compared to metal. You're shoveling like metal, like ball bearings and
Oh, wow.
yeah.
I don't even like shoveling or raking, so.
It's like every
I would be
shovel
tortured
was like
to
40 pounds, you know. 40, 60 pounds.
They're not listening. Karen, you go in there and tell them Daddy's calling you so we don't have to yell across the room.
You guys gonna be grounded.
You said not so we don't have to yell across the room.
I didn't
Did you hear Obama is stalling on attacking ISIS?
Why?
What do you mean it's stolen?
Well, Congress is asking for a full-on, full-scale war against ISIS. Like complete defeat, attack, like pretty much say, you know, pull the trigger on the military and let them do what they need to do to take care of ISIS. And the only thing stopping it is Obama is stalling. He doesn't want to do it just yet because they don't have a clear, concise plan. And I'm like, the clear, concise plan should be, hey, generals, wipe them out.
Another shock and awe.
Yeah, just wipe them out.
I mean, I'm all for good plans, you know. Still, so if they don't have a good plan, I can understand.
But my thinking on it is, what kind of plan does the president need? He has generals to do all that.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Let the generals do their job, you know? There's tons of, you know, 4-star generals and admirals that can perfectly well take care of all of that.
Just look at history.
All right, let's see here. Here's a couple.
Yeah, as soon as the politicians get involved, it causes problems. Just let the military do their job.
Anna.
You put them on the front.
Yeah.
And they're family. And they're asking, you want us to expedite this, you want us to drag it out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right now, not
I wasn't looking at
Yeah, I heard that there was stuff going on in Vietnam where they had to, they were ready to fire, and they had to wait for a call back from Congress
He doesn't care.
to be able to fire their weapons at the enemy who's right in front of them.
Mom, we're here.
All right, well, why don't we bless Hashem and get right into our study here today. Oh, you don't have one? Okay, I'll share with my mama.
Yeah.
Oh, got me, Daddy.
What's that?
Oh, got one.
You don't have, well, you can share with me too. How about that? So we can get right into our
Can I say one, two, three?
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, borei mori hadrachen. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher noten Torah emet u'sorot Yeshua le'amo, Yisrael u'lechol ha'amim, al yedei beno Yeshua HaMashiach, Adonenu. Amen. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives us the Torah of truth and the good news of salvation to his people Israel, to all peoples, through his Son, Yeshua the Messiah, our Lord. Chaim B'Yeshua.
I like the Bible cover pretty well.
Oh yes, I know, it's here.
It's very fancy.
teaser, you're a teaser.
Okay, so what are we in? Mark chapter 9?
13.
Oh, was it 13? I was looking at Nessa's page here, and she said
I was looking at yours.
I was just flipping through the chapters, reminding myself where I was. I was like, what chapter were we on?
So we were looking at each other.
Yeah, I looked at yours, it's like,
We're not even in Mark anymore.
Funny.
yes, that is correct.
Looks a good thing we have you guys. So.
Yeah.
Oh, we're in a group?
No, wait a second.
Why are you in a group?
Mark 13.
Mark 13.
You read me history.
Well, I'm clicking through these and I accidentally clicked on it.
I'm just teasing.
You're just giving a click by
How many of them start with vowels?
description of where I'm going.
What start with vowels?
Okay, so now that we are in the right chapter, chapter 13, verses 1 through 37. As Yeshua came out of the temple, one of the Talmudim said to him, "Look, Rabbi, what huge stones, what magnificent buildings. You see all these great buildings?" Yeshua said to him, "They will be totally destroyed. Not a single stone will be left standing." As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Kepha, Yaakov, Yochanan, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what sign will show when all of these things are about to be accomplished?" Yeshua began speaking to them, "Watch out, don't let anyone fool you."
Many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and they will fool many people. When you hear the noise of wars nearby, and the news of wars far off, don't become frightened. Such things must happen, but the end is yet to come. For peoples will fight each other, and nations will fight each other. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pains. But you, watch yourselves. They will hand you over to the local Sanhedrins. You will be beaten up in synagogues, and on my account you will stand before governors and kings as witnesses to them. Indeed, the good news has to be proclaimed. First, to all the goyim.
The nations.
And when they arrest you and bring you to trial, don't worry beforehand about what to say. Rather, say whatever is given you when the time comes. For it will not be just you speaking, but the Ruach HaKodesh. Brother will betray brother to death, and father his child. Children will turn against their parents and have them put to death. And everyone will hate you because of me. But whoever holds out till the end will be delivered. Now when you see the abomination that causes devastation standing where it ought not to be, let the reader understand the illusion. That will be the time for those in Yehuda to escape to the hills. If someone is on the roof, he must not go down and enter his house to take any of his belongings.
If someone is in the field, he must not turn back to get his coat. What a terrible time it will be for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that it may not happen in winter, for there will be worse trouble at that time than there has ever been from the very beginning when God created the universe until now. And there will be nothing like it again. Indeed, if God had not limited the duration of the trouble, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those whom he has chosen, he has limited it.
At the time, if anyone says to you, "Look here, the Messiah," or "See, there he is," don't believe him. There will appear false messiahs and false prophets, performing signs and wonders for the purpose, if possible, of misleading the chosen. But if you watch out, I have told you everything in advance. In those days, after that trouble, the sun will grow dark, the moon will stop shining, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers in heaven will be shaken.
Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with tremendous power and glory. He will send out his angels and gather together his chosen people from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. Now let the fig tree teach you its lesson. When its branches begin to sprout and leaves appear, you know that summer is approaching. In the same way, when you see all these things happening, you are to know that the time is near, right at the door. Yes, I tell you that this generation will certainly not pass away before all these things happen.
Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will certainly not pass away. However, when that day and hour will come, no one knows, not the angels in heaven, not the Son, just the Father. Stay alert. Be on your guard, for you do not know when the time will come. It's like a man who travels away from home, puts his servants in charge, each with his own task, and tells the doorkeeper to stay alert. So, stay alert, for you don't know when the owner of the house will come. We want to close this up in the last few
Whether
verses.
it will be evening, midnight, cockcrow or morning, you don't want him to come suddenly and find you sleeping. And what I say to you, I say to everyone. Stay alert.
No sleeping.
Amen. Thoughts, questions, insights?
There goes your whole 8-hour sleep at night thing. I do have a question real quick, just the syntax on verse 30. I didn't look it up in my electronic one, but my version says, and I believe you were reading CJB, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says, yes, I tell you that this people will certainly not pass. He said generation. I'm wondering if there's a syntax difference between different versions of the CJB on that.
This one says generation.
Yeah, literal version says generation. Hold on, let me just take a look here.
Well, I'm talking just a syntax between the different versions of the CJB itself. Because mine says people, not generation. And I'm looking at CJB.
Oh. Yeah, no, the CGB I have says people.
It says people,
Mine
his
says
says
people,
generation.
too.
And his says generation.
Mine says people.
Oh, so and they're all
Mine is
CJBs?
CJB.
Yeah, except
Oh.
for these are the in-house CJBs. They must have changed.
They could have been an update. It might be just that in the Greek. Let me just take a look here really quick for verse 30.
It's like people.
That's just the first time I've seen a difference in between different CJBs at all.
It is generation, so it's.
Yeah, this is Amen. Lego umin oti u me parlethe he genea. Yep. So genea is the word for
Generation.
generation. It sounds
And
like.
it's, I just checked about a dozen other versions, and it's all generation, the same word, so.
Yeah.
So they just updated it from this people will certainly not pass away before all these things.
Yeah.
It's
So
generation.
that is a little bit of a paraphrase.
Yeah.
So it's talking about that group of people which represents a generation.
Yeah. Well, and I understand,
Yeah.
it makes sense. I just have never seen any difference between two CJBs.
Yeah, that is interesting. So perhaps they recognized that and they said,
Yeah.
generation probably is a better literal translation, and they decided to update it.
It's gotta be.
Which
what it
is good to see that they're updating their translations.
Yeah.
Things that stand out to me was the stay alert, I think,
You would think their electronic one would be the most up to date, and it says people. My electronic version says people.
It says people. I don't know. Maybe they.
Does it say generation or people?
I haven't updated this version.
What does yours say here?
mine says people.
People.
The electronics are people.
But the newer ones, the ones that are on the congregational version, say generation.
Yeah.
That's probably the newer ones. That
Yeah.
came after these. That version came
And
after this.
you said yours
The
says
electric- he's talking about
people or
the electronic.
generation?
My electric people, but that could be very well based off of an older version.
Could be, yeah.
It sounds like it's probably the case. The question is what people is he talking about? What generation is is it being talked about here?
The generation before the Olam Haba.
True, yeah. But specifically, how do we know which generation it is based on this text here?
I don't think you do you?
I would think it's the generation who sees those signs.
Right.
Exactly. So it's the generation that sees all those signs in concert. Obviously, there's always some of these things that have been happening all throughout history.
So that never made sense to me. I was like, well, wait a minute, the first generation already passed a long time ago.
Yeah.
And that never made sense, so now it's making sense that the people who see all these signs together.
Yeah. So if we can legitimately nail down the fact that every single one of these these signs he's speaking of are actually taking place, whatever that generation that can do that, apparently that particular generation is not going to pass away. And then there's of course the debate about what constitutes a generation.
Well, pass away, maybe that they're not being raptured, they stay with you.
And so there's lots of ideas of what a generation is.
Yeah.
That could be as short as 20 or 30 years, and much
Just
much
depends on
longer.
what anthropologist is figuring it out. I think there is a standard for anthropology.
Well, I
What
think
what
that
constitutes generation, but I don't know that, this is conforming
different
to
people
that.
groups had different standards of what was considered generation.
That's what I mean, yeah. I know there's a standard today for general anthropology, but like I'm saying, this is Yeshua talking, it's what's a generation to God, not a generation to anthropologists.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there's lots of conjectures. There's even the possibility that a Yovel could be considered a generation.
Yeah,
It's from one time period to another time period.
that would actually make sense.
But that's just a conjecture.
It is a conjecture, but it does make sense.
Yeah.
When some people consider it 70 years, some people consider it 30 years,
Mhm.
50 years would be a happy medium, and it lines up with,
And that
time.
would be a pretty average life expectancy. Anyways, but so yeah, it seems to be talking about the generation who sees these signs.
Let's say before you guys were talking about the electronic thing was about, I said stay alert, we accept Hashem, into our lives, but I think it's important to continue it's a walk, it's a day-by-day thing, and not to get lazy. Oh, well, I'm saved, so I'm just not going to spend time with him today, or...
You have to keep plenty of oil for your lamp.
I think you need to always be on guard about it, because we've seen wonderful people, Torah observant people, who walk away, and I don't know, maybe they'll come back, God knows their heart, I don't, but that we need to be, on our guard with our relationship, like spend time with him and not get lazy about it, because
Sometimes it's a frog in the frying pan.
Well, yeah, this seems to be the thrust of the end of the passage is stay alert, and in the opposite of what he describes it as is sleeping, spiritually sleeping and being, spiritually apathetic, kind of sluggish.
well, I know we can all get in our funks, but to be, encouraging each other to be alert,
Yeah.
and not get frustrated when we encourage each other, right?
That's what one of the reasons we need our brothers. It's kind of like, in a sense, this may not be the best example, but like a workout partner. Because we are commanded to look at this as like a race or something, and to beat our body into submission. And it talks about spiritual exercise, things of that nature. So maybe you can think of it as a workout partner. We're going to push that much harder if you have your partner going, one more, as opposed to you just being by yourself. And some people are more motivated than others, but if you have your workout partner, you're just so much more motivated. And so that's kind of how it is with brothers and sisters. You need those partners to encourage you into love and goodness, and to be diligent. But as we go back to the beginning of the chapter here, as I read this passage where it says, "Look, Rabbi, what huge stones with magnificent buildings!" I can only imagine, the glory of what it all looked like when it was in pristine condition. But just even, going to Yerushalayim and walking in those areas and looking at those huge stones, you can still get an idea of kind of what they're talking about. And there's just these massive, massive stones, and they're just all perfectly fit together. And you're just wondering, wow, what a marvel that they were able to accomplish that. But I guess Herod was known for his buildings, and they had some pretty amazing techniques, that they were able to put some of this together. But when I read that, I think the same thing. When I walked there, I thought the same exact thing, And just for Yeshua to say, and it's significant because he in verse 2 goes on and says, "You see all these great buildings, these ones you're marveling about, these big, huge stones. You can't even imagine how they got these things on top of each other. They'll be totally destroyed. Not a single stone will be left standing." So you think of these not a single stone. You think all these little bricks or something. No, they're these huge, the biggest bricks you've ever seen in your whole life. Won't be standing,
And see, I don't think that prophecy has even come to pass yet, because if you look at Jerusalem today, those stones are still on top of each other.
Well, the majority of them are knocked down. But
right, but I think that when all this comes to pass, even those are not going to be on top of each other anymore.
My question is who do they think Yeshua is? I mean, look, like he's supposed to be amazed that It's like,
Yeah.
everybody goes here like every week, you know, and this is like a very popular place. Suddenly you guys want to make a big deal about it, you know, and like impress the rabbi. Look, isn't this a wonderful place? And he's like, yeah, like, let me tell you. It was a good opportunity for him to give them a little prophetic insight in what was going to happen soon.
Well, he's probably also thinking in the back of his head at the time, he ain't seen nothing yet.
And you know, it's also,
Wait till the New Jerusalem.
it's also, you know, revealing the fact that his temple is going to be destroyed too when they kill him and crucify him too. So it's not just a, you know, one stone won't be laid on top of another.
Right,
It's like,
yeah.
they're gonna tear down this temple as well.
They're not just gonna beat him, they're gonna kill him.
Yeah, and we know from context that's what he was. You know, that was what his. Obviously, it was a prophecy, but he was also speaking about his body.
You mentioned you didn't think his prophecy was fulfilled yet, but in the context is the buildings. I think every single one of the stones of the buildings got torn down. The Wailing Wall is still there, but that's not a building really.
Yeah, I
That's
guess
just
you're
kind
right.
of that western retaining wall.
That's
where you-
yeah.
Yeah.
Foundational retaining wall,
But yeah, there's. Oh, go ahead, Debbie.
There's, when you get into 13:24 and it's talking about the stars, the sun, and the moon, there's numerous references in the Old Testament, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Joel, and even Revelation to talk about. So he's almost repeating these things.
Oh yeah.
I've told you before,
Yeah.
through the prophets, and I'm telling you now.
Absolutely.
One of the things this reminds me of, you know, the tearing down of that temple. When I was in Rome, I took my family to the monuments they've got there, and one of the monuments is the Arch of Titus. And the Arch of Titus brags about all the things that Titus did, and it shows the golden menorah that they stole from the temple and carried off to Rome. It's
Yeah.
right up there in the arch.
Yep.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You probably seen a picture of it before. You probably just didn't realize what it was.
That-
It's a pretty well
Or
known.
where?
That depiction of the menorah, from what I understand, is considered to be like the premier historical artifact showing what the menorah very likely would have looked like. At least the menorah in Herod's temple, which I don't know that we know that was the original menorah.
How big is it?
Well, there's.
Well, it's a carving. It's a stone carving of. So we just know kind of the shape of it, which I think is very similar
I
to the
think
one
it
right
showed people like carrying it. It was,
Right.
It was huge.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was
They
very
have.
big.
They have. You know the. In that same area where the Kotel is, you'll see a replica. Well, they built a new menorah based on what
Right.
the traditional standards of what they understand
And it's supposed to be the
from
one
their own
that-
tradition and from the Torah. They built a scale, so and it was meant to be the one that's going to be placed in the new Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, and
You were standing by
it's
it.
yeah, I was standing by it, and it's huge. It's very very large. It's there's no way that one person could carry it. You saw in the picture, there's many people, and that was absolutely
Yeah.
necessary. And you know, in regards to the this is just a little side issue. There is debate actually still about what the original menorah looked like.
And that's why I'm saying, the one that the Romans carried off may not have been the original one.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, yeah, there's debate on that, and it could be not. But the one, if you look at the one that they have in Jerusalem, there by
Very
the temple,
similar to the one-
temple there, it's
carving in
yeah,
Rome, yeah.
it's very very similar.
Yeah. As far as
so-
the V-shaped one is concerned, it's
Oh,
very.
cool.
Yeah,
I think that's unlikely that was the one that they
yeah.
originally had.
In regards to its
That's a
basic
stone
shape, it's very
building.
similar,
That's cool.
and the so you know that they diligently sought out through the tradition and through the Torah how to put that together.
I think
if
that-
they're going to put that on public display for all of the Jewish people to accept, and
From what I've seen and read, and I could be totally off, but my personal opinion is the V-shaped one that you see a lot is based on Kabbalistic tradition.
it could be. Yeah.
It's
I
not
think
really-
Rashi.
it's
That's
not
how it
really
was shaped
yeah,
or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the other possibility is that it was instead of having that curve, it was just
Right.
kind of like this,
Right.
looked like kind of like a tree.
Yeah.
with the 7 branches just flat across the top. And so a lot of some Orthodox tradition, you'll see that kind of weird shape where it looks like a V, just a bunch of V's, 7 of those for the menorah.
There's a definite mention of this being a certain time that no one but the Father knows when the Son of Man is going to come with great power and glory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously, not the rapture, because, when he comes, everything that would have happened up till then has going to have happened already.
Right.
This is when he sends forth his angels in verse 27 to gather the elect from the 4 winds.
Right.
From the farthest end of the earth into the farthest end of heaven even. So it's a big ingathering of people, and it's not the rapture, but he's going to gather his elect together at this time, which is, it's almost like the culmination of when everything happens. You wonder how this fits into the prophecies and Revelation and Daniel, and when you think of it all coming to a big end. Is this like at the end of the 1,000 years? Is this at the end of the 7-year tribulation? But it's definitely the end of something where it would have to be, to start the 1,000 years, I'm guessing, because if the Son of Man is going to be coming, in power and glory, it's going to be a sign of his triumph, not just, he already triumphed if we're in the 1,000 years. So, I don't know, anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think that when it comes to this particular instance here, we have it's preceded by this this great time of trouble, which has traditionally been spoken of in Judaism and in the scriptures, I believe, as well, as Jacob's trouble. And so this, in verse 20, says, "Indeed, if God had not limited duration of the trouble, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those who he has chosen, he has limited it." So this is this time that precedes the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah. And there's going to be a lot of false prophets running around on the earth. You're not going to see these false prophets running around during the 1,000 years. So we have all of this preceding this, the appearance of the false prophets to mislead the chosen, if that were possible. And then in verse 24 it says, "In those days after the trouble, the sun will go dark, the moon will stop shining," and this is before this great day of the judgment. It's leading up to that point. "The stars will fall from the sky, the powers in heaven will be shaken." So in other words, Hashem's getting ready to judge the earth here. And then they will see the Son of Man coming on clouds in tremendous power and glory, which we know, we see this in the book of Revelation as Messiah is coming to judge the earth. This happens right before he sets up his kingdom. So as this is happening, we also know in the book of Revelation, remember it speaks about these, the chosen of each tribe of Israel that are being brought together, and they're going out and they're bringing the message of the good news, to the entire earth. But we also, besides that, we also know that during this similar time, we can read this in the prophets. We can find a few passages, like in the book of Yeshayahu and Isaiah, where it talks about all of God's people being brought before the 4 corners. Literally says that, and so this very well could be a prophecy of that, of God's people, of Israel being brought, and of course it seems like this is a work of his angels that are bringing this about. Often that's what happens. Things start moving, these angels are somewhere in the background doing something. Of course, someone could interpret this as the what's called the rapture, on the Greek of harpatsu, this catching up from the four corners of the earth. So that's that's a possibility. But we do have in the prophets, for example, we can take a look at this here. Does anybody have any do you know any off the bat?
What's that?
Some of these prophecies about the people of Israel being brought from the 4 corners of the earth.
Zechariah 2:6 is the one that talks about dispersing them to the 4 winds. Deuteronomy 30 verse 4 is God will gather.
One thing that's obvious is in verse 29, it says, "Even so you too, when you see these things happening, recognize that he's near, right at the door." So if you see them, that means you're there. Didn't mean you got raptured out yet.
What?
I'm sorry. So it means you're going to see them. So those who are able to see them are remaining. And if you want to see them, you better hope you remain. And so if you get taken out, it must mean that something else happened contrary.
Yeah. Well, then, yeah, that's a possibility. And there's also other possibility that it seems like when God's people are caught up, like Shaul explains, that at that time he does that, and then his holy ones are coming with him. Because they're with him. It says, they're with him in the air. So it could be that, his holy angels and his holy ones are coming, and
Well, that's probably like what we just read here, because it brings them from the four corners of the earth, but also of heaven too. So it's, like I said, a big gathering of heaven and earth of all his chosen ones. So.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, not only the actual heavens, like the angelic beings we're thinking about, but even you can think of it in another sense that these people during this time it's going to be somewhere I think around our time. You're going to have, how are you going to bring all these people from the four corners of the earth so quickly? Some of the prophecies talk about coming up on doves or what is it? How does it say? I think it's in Isaiah too. But anyways, it basically gives a picture of maybe bringing them all together in planes. Something like that. I'll have to find that prophecy too. But in Yeshayahu, here's one of them, Isaiah chapter 43, and there's several others. Verse 4 maybe, start. Because I regard you as valued and honored, because I love you, for I will give people nations in exchange for your life. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. I will bring your descendants from the east, and I will gather them from the west. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, don't hold them back. Bring my sons from afar away, and my daughters from the ends of the earth. Everyone who bears my name, whom I created for my glory, I formed him. Yes, I made him. So this is one possibility. We know this is going to happen at the end of time. So this is a possibility that this is speaking of this prophecy, and many others that basically say the same thing. So that's definitely from the four corners. So there's going to be a lot of people coming. During this time where there's persecution, just think, it's going to be greater than anything that has ever been on earth, but we can maybe use some historical instances to get an idea of what things might be looking like. As this great persecution is happening, as Satan's going against, going after Israel, chasing after, her children. Just as it was in the Holocaust, we see that all of these different nations were, a lot of them were Nazi occupied, and so the Jewish people were having to run for their lives. They were coming from everywhere.
Being turned away.
And they were being turned away, and so a lot of them they're all converging with Israel, and a lot of them were, not all of them, but and you can only imagine during that time that a similar thing will be happening, and especially after Hashem defeats Israel is going to be coming up,
And we've seen glimpses
And that's
of
part of the prophecy is I'll bring my people back to the land. That's part of this fulfilled prophecy, so it has to happen.
We've seen glimpses of that with Russia, with
Yeah.
Ethiopia,
Mhm.
trainloads flying in,
Yep.
boatloads coming in.
Yep. So we see a lot of persecution.
I'm always interested in that prophecy because about half of all the Jews are in Israel. The other half are in the United States. I don't think God does things halfway, so I'm wondering what's going to cause a massive exflow of Jews from the United States to go to Israel. It's going to probably be pretty bad here.
There could be a number. That could be it. It's a possibility. Although I have hopes and prayers for the U.S. that will be one of the last nations that hold out. I think I'm trying to remember where the prophecy is, but I remember reading a prophecy about there's one particular nation that's a thorn in the side of the anti-Messiah in the future. I can't imagine what other country could be a thorn than us, and who supports Israel like we do. But maybe another possibility. It could be that things are getting pretty heated. We'll probably be humbled, but still viable enough to be a thorn. But at the same time, as Israel's being attacked, you can imagine, as things are happening, God's people, the Jewish people are seeing, all these miracles happen, and they're getting revived. It says all Israel shall be saved. So he's going to refine them, and he's going to, probably set a lot of their hearts on fire for him. So you can imagine maybe that a large portion of them would want to come and fight, for Israel. And I think we do see prophecies about that as well, don't we? About, and that says on that day they will fight.
Give me a 60. We're going. How's that?
It speaks as the princes of Israel come together and fight.
So there's going to be a lot of false messiahs, false teachers, and their purpose is to deceive and to fool many.
I think a lot of people even say things.
And that's happening today. We have false teachers, even people who appear to be messiahs, and they're deceiving people. And who are they deceiving? They're deceiving the people who aren't studying, who aren't reading, who aren't making it their purpose to know His Word, to even read like we're reading today. We know right now they're going to be here, but we know that the end isn't near yet, because guess what? When He does come, He's going to be coming in great power and glory. He's not going to be over here, trying to have a little Bible study and lead somebody into his great teaching. That's not how it happens, And so we should be very reminded how many times stay alert, and don't be fooled.
Well, there's an amazing push in America to blend Christianity and Islam. When you start doing that, you really, with the anti-Semitism that existed in Christian history, and anti-Semitism that obviously, appears in Islam today, you could see the blending of Christianity and Islam being a huge threat to the Jewish people.
Of course, you see that in a lot of religions, the blending that aren't supposed to be, certain things aren't supposed to be blended.
But I'm saying,
Mixing paganism.
yeah, if you look at the United States, though, this was founded primarily as a Christian nation, or Masonic, however you want to look at it. But primarily the people that lived here at its founding were Christian, and I think predominantly that's the largest number population of religion in the United States still. But with big push in the public schools to accept Islam as a viable religion, and I mean they're doing
You are
things.
seeing that more in some
Yeah.
Christian sects, although there's still pretty heavy
Right,
resistance.
but I
against
could
it.
see how that could easily turn into heavy anti-Semitism if you were to blend those two religions.
Oh, sure.
And those would be the two most, I think,
I think even Hitler worked with
Most-
Islamic armies, because they had that common interest against the Jewish people.
what I was trying to say though, as far as the United States is concerned, those would be the two opportunistic religions to join together
Sure.
if there was going to be anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And,
I found the passage, the prophecy, in regards to one of the possible motives for a lot of the Jewish people to go to Israel. I think there's lots of them. They're probably just realizing that they should go there, and be part of there. That's probably one of it. But it's Zechariah chapter 12. So this is dealing with the end time. I think paralleling some of the stuff that Yeshua was talking about. So I think it's good to read this one. This is a prophecy, the word of Hashem concerning Israel. Here is the message from Hashem, who stretched out the heavens, laid the foundation of the earth, and formed a spirit inside human beings. I will make Yerushalayim a cup that will stagger the surrounding peoples. Even Yehudah will be caught up in the siege against Yerushalayim. When that day comes, I will make Yerushalayim a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who try to lift it will hurt themselves, and all the earth's nations will be massed against her. When that day comes, says Hashem, I will strike all the horses with panic and the riders with madness. I will keep watch over Yehudah, but I will strike blind all the horses of the peoples. The leaders of Yehudah will say to themselves, those living in Yerushalayim are my strength through Hashem Tzibaot, their God. And so when I think of Yehudah, I think of maybe just in general the Jewish people. When that day comes, I will make the leaders of Yehudah like a blazing fire pan in a pile of wood. So he's going to set them on fire.
what chapter are we in?
Zechariah chapter 12.
12, what verse are you on?
Verse 6 now. So when that day comes, I will make the leaders of Yehudah like a blazing fire pan and pile of wood, like a fiery torch among sheaves of grain. They will devour all the surrounding peoples on the right and the left. Yerushalayim will be inhabited in her own place, Yerushalayim. Hashem will save the tents of Yehudah first, so that the glory of the house of David and the glory of those living in Yerushalayim will not appear greater than that of Yehudah. When that day comes, Hashem will defend those living in Yerushalayim. On that day, even someone who stumbles will be like David. So in other words, even the weakest person is going to be as strong as David in Israel. And the house of David will be like God, like the angel of Hashem before them. When that day comes, I will seek to destroy all the nations attacking Yerushalayim, and I will pour out in the house of David and in the those living in Yerushalayim a spirit of grace and prayer, and they will look to me whom they have pierced. They will mourn for him as one mourns for an only son. There will be in bitterness on his behalf like the bitterness of the firstborn. When that day comes, there will be a great mourning in Yerushalayim, like that for Hadad Rimon and Megiddo Valley. And then the land will mourn, each family by itself, the family of house of David by itself, and their wives by themselves, the family of the house of Natan by itself, and their wives. It goes on and on about that mourning. But the fact is, it seems like Hashem just galvanizes the Jewish people to fight, and they're just on fire. And it seems like in that same time frame, he's revealing to them the Messiah. At the same time, they're coming to this spiritual realization that Yeshua is the Mashiach. They realize that he appears and that they're mourning for him. And gosh, but you can just imagine, as that's all happening at once, how powerful God's going to be for the Jewish people as they're fighting at the same time they're recognizing their Messiah.
In the beginning of this chapter, in verse 9 and part of 8 and 9, it talks about how we're going to be basically in a lot of trouble. They're going to hand us over, and we're going to be beaten up in the synagogues, and we're going to stand before governors, but we're going to be a witness for him. And then it says in verse 10, indeed, the good news has to be proclaimed to all the goyim. Now, here's a question. That's happened, right? Is it done? Because we've all heard it said that that the time of the goyim has come and now it's over, and now we're in another era at this time. So is that just a position? Is that valid? Is the time of the goyim done? Are we now in another era, or are we still to proclaim to the goyim until he comes down to the Mount of Olives?
I think it's getting close, but I don't think it's been completely fulfilled. I think there's still a lot of the nations.
Because I hear it from a lot of people. They're saying that it's the time of the Gentiles, the nations, has come and it's passed. So there's no longer a big, like you look in most churches today, there's not big, evangelism going on. It seems like it doesn't exist anymore. You go into any church and say, who's in charge of evangelism? They're like, oh, well, we're talking about starting it up. It's like nobody's doing it. It's almost like it's over. And that's just in the Christian church itself. Whether it's, who's supposed to go to the goyim? It sounds like the people who are supposed to be going to them are the Messianic believers. From this point of view, it's not those who.
Well, I think it's just in general. I think you're right about that to a large degree, but it's just basically the good news has to be proclaimed first to all the goyim, so-called goyim, and that hasn't happened. There's still some. I think we're getting much closer to that, and thus the season that we're in. But it says this has to happen before. The good news has to be proclaimed first to all the goyim before these other things are going to start unfolding.
Well, the other question I have is, how many Christian churches can you go into and ask them what the good news is, and they'll tell you that Jesus died on the cross for your
so there's a lot of false good news.
And they don't even know that in reality it's repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. They don't even know what the good news is. So how are they spreading it?
Yeah. So the very fact that these things, other things, are not coming to pass yet in this prophecy here that he's giving, they haven't happened yet, tells us that the good news has not been proclaimed to all the goyim, because if it had, that prerequisite out of the way, then we would already be entering into this great time of trial, which we haven't yet.
I don't think that it's been proclaimed to all the Christians.
So,
you're right down to
it. Yeah, you're right. But then we also have the 144,000 spoken in the book of Revelation, and that's one of their jobs, is to complete that mission.
Yeah.
And so what you were saying earlier, I think, is very accurate, because you're going to have these messianic, from my perspective, when it says you're going to have these messianic Jews that are going forth with the message of the good news. They're teaching it from a Hebraic Torah foundation. They're teaching it how it's supposed to be taught. It's the actual good news, the genuine good news. Right. And It's, Revelation chapter 7, it speaks of all of these that were sealed. And in the context, and from the media context, it seems, and this is what a lot of the other commentators have come up with too, but I would agree with this. In verse 9, after it describes all these that are sealed from Israel, the tribes of Israel, it says, after this I looked. So it even connects it to the previous verses. After this sealing of these 144,000, I looked, and there before me was a huge crowd, too large for anyone to count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language. They were standing in front of the throne, in front of the Lamb, dressed in white robes and holding palm branches in their hands. And they shouted, "Victory to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." And so these are all the nations that have been redeemed by receiving the message of the good news. But immediately, what really precedes that is the sealing of these 144,000
So do you think
that I think are going out.
could it include us?
What's that again?
Could that multitude at that time include us, do you think? Or are they only the people who have been evangelized by this 144,000? Is it everybody?
Well, it seems the immediate context seems to connect it directly to this 144,000, which is at a particular period in time. So I would interpret that within that context to say this group is a result of this 144,000.
You could be one of the 144,000.
What's that again?
I said you could be part of the
It's
144,000. quite
possible, But there's going to be such a large amount of people that come to faith during that time in the end, and that's always been Israel's calling. So it's a fulfillment of the prophecy and the calling that Israel should be a light unto the nations. They're going out and they're bringing the message of the good news is being preached, and then the result of that is that there is such a large crowd that no one can count it.
Lots of people.
Yeah, lots and lots of people.
Only God knows the number.
Yeah. And in verse 14, it's very clear who these people are. So you have that immediate context, but then you have, as you continue to read, you have a little bit farther out, but you still consider immediate context. It says, "Sir, I answered," or rather, go back to verse 13. One of the elders asked me, "These people dressed in white robes, who are they, and where are they from?" He says, "Sir, I answered, you know." And he told me, "These are the people who have come out of the great persecution. They have washed their robes and made them white with the blood of the Lamb." So they come directly out of that time as a result of people
So anybody who happens to be there at this time.
that are hearing the message of the good news. Yeah, they come out of the persecution, that great persecution.
I think a lot of people are going to miss them the way things stand right now. Their understanding of Messiah, the way, a Torah-less Messiah, there's going to be some major, missing it, which is kind of scary, unless, I don't know.
That would be the world's biggest oops.
Because they're looking for
They'll be like, oops.
a Messiah that came to do away with it all. And
Shouldn't have had that spiral baked ham.
it's kind of scary, I don't think, he just flew over my head.
I have a feeling when that day comes, there's going to be an awful lot of pastors of churches saying, "No, that wasn't the rapture. That wasn't the rapture," because we would have gone.
Yeah. I just remember back in my Christian days, the one thing I looked forward to the most on Christmas was the spiral baked ham. It was like this candied ham that we always had.
Another thing to nail this,
No, I'm just saying, it'd be like, whoops.
Another passage in Revelation to nail this 144,000, this final proclamation of the good news to the nations, as we're reading here in our study portion, is Revelation chapter 14. Before, I think, what Revelation 7 is what we were before in?
Yes.
Yeah. So Revelation chapter 14, starting from verse 1, it says, "Then I looked, and there was a Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him were 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. I heard a sound from heaven like the sound of rushing waters and like the sound of pealing thunder. The sound I heard was also like that of harpists playing on their harps. They were singing a new song before the throne, before the four living beings and the elders, and no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who have been ransomed from the world. These are the ones who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They have been ransomed from among humanity as firstfruits for God and the Lamb. Verse 5, on their lips no lie was found. They are without defect. And so, again, we have the very next verse, immediate context. We read about these 144,000, and then what does the next verse say? Next, I saw another flying angel in mid-heaven with the everlasting good news to proclaim to those living on the earth, to every nation, tribe, and people. In a loud voice he said, fear God, give him glory, for the hour has come when he will pass judgment. Worship the one who made heaven and earth, sea and the springs of water. So you have these two places in Revelation where you have this 144,000. The very next verse you have this idea of them being these redeemed people, and these people that are receiving the message of the good news. I think they're not immediately connected to each other for no reason. I think that's a result of these 144,000 that are going up. But the fact is that this is happening until the very end. This proclamation of the message of good news.
Right.
These 144,000 are men who have never laid with their wives.
Well, there's another.
It sounds like they're virgin.
There's another debate on that, what that actually means, and I've had those discussions. There's good arguments on both sides. There is this concept that people believe that they're actually literal virgins, which that's a lot. That's a lot of them. So some people say, well,
Which is kind of
that's
amazing.
it's like where are all these virgins going to come from? Within Israel, because most of them get married at very very young age in Judaism. So where are you going to get up these 144,000 virgins? The other aspect is how we interpret that is based off of how the Tanakh uses those terms often. And so you have the Tanakh, God, using terms like adulterer, right? You adulterers, right?
It's a description of a pure-hearted person.
He uses these terms, these sexual terms, not to describe literal aspects so much as he's describing their spiritual state.
Level of righteousness.
That's consistent throughout the Tanakh.
Right.
So the other discussion is that it could very well be speaking of that, because that's well laid understanding of some of those terms throughout the Tanakh. So there's both those arguments. So I guess I just leave that up to you guys to decide which one makes more sense.
So it's a very urgent period of time, especially when we're told to flee to the mountains. Now, if you just happen to be on the housetop, you're not supposed to go down or go in to get anything out of your house. And if you're in the field, you're not supposed to turn back to get your coat. So you're just supposed to head for the hills, and it's an urgency. I guess, I know it sounds like a silly question, but like, you're on the top of your house. I'm guessing that there used to be stairs that went up to a house on the outside also. And then there was ways to get in your house. So if you're up on top of your house, you just go down the steps and you head for the mountains,
Or sometimes a lot of these houses had all kinds of different constructions, but sometimes they just had a ladder going up to the second level within the house itself.
But you're not supposed to, probably the
Just
going
jump off.
down. The going down is the part where you go down to go in the house, I'm thinking. Not so much as, just stay there, because you can't go to the mountain if you're on top of your house, right? So you do have to go down, you just don't go down by way of the house to go inside again.
Right, so go down to enter the house. You can do that a couple different ways. You can go down the ladder from the top of the roof, going down into your house,
I
and then grabbing it.
think what this is trying to tell us is that Hashem's going to provide for us.
Right.
And we don't have to worry about, because you'd be thinking, get food. Isn't that what people are talking about today? Make sure you got all this stuff, food and water and clothes and
Guns.
we have to go and build bunkers and be ready for the end to come. It's
Very
like,
well,
no.
like samurais.
Hashem says, just go to the mountains. Don't worry about anything in your house, and don't worry about going to get your coat. Just go. And sounds like we're going to be provided for, just like they provided.
And he had it in the
I think that's a valid
past,
point.
too.
I think that's a valid point, because if he really expected for us, because obviously there's a certain context here. We're looking at Yerushalayim, but I think that this instruction could be applied to other situations as well, right? Even in America maybe. But so the immediate context is that those who are in Yerushalayim, when you see, the enemies, surrounding. I think there's another place where it says it talks about this as well and states it a little bit differently. But in verse 14 it mentions Yehuda. So you know that's the geographical location. So but the point was he made in other places, when you see your enemies surrounding you, then you go and do this, right? You don't run through the hills before then, but you go quickly. Hey guys.
Well, with this being a prophecy too, Yeshua knows what the modern world looks like, and if you're on the roof of a building, like say you live in an apartment in Tel Aviv, and you're on a building, you're not going to go down through the stairway to go through the house. You're going to take the fire escape. Just get off the house.
Again, each building's a little bit different.
Yeah, they are.
Because you have a lot of buildings that are flat topped, and you have stairs going from inside the house up into.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
but you also have them coming on the outside.
But most modern buildings all have fire escapes. If you're on top of them, and if you're on the roof of a regular house, you're not going to be able to get down inside of it. So.
Yeah. So, but the point I think that Michael was making was good here is that Hashem does not give us the instruction to go get our bug out pack.
Right.
And go get our machine guns and our knives and go grab everything else and then go to the hills.
Right.
Yeshua is not thinking those things are important for us to do. What he actually says is, he says, don't even turn back to go get his coat, let alone all your machine guns and your bug out pack and all that stuff.
And this is stuff that's applying to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Because that's where the context is.
Right.
Versus Russia, United States, Brazil. Versus.
So what if you just so happen to be wearing your bug out?
But you think that if that's
That would be convenient.
if that is, it could be a Calvin Homer argument. Even you could use that as that's the stronger, the more intense situation.
Mm-hmm.
That is the focus of the fire.
Right.
So if it was
The anti-Semitism is growing throughout the world.
But it's worse there because you have all these nations coming against them and all this firepower on this one little spot on Earth.
Well, you think about
And so if it's true for that, how much more true would it be for the surrounding nations where you don't have that much of an intense situation? On the other hand, someone could make the argument that because it's so intense that you wouldn't want to waste any time and you would go.
Right.
And so someone could say that the opposite thing, that in the outside of the States or outside of the Yerushalayim where you don't have as an intense situation, then maybe you have more time to do it. So I don't know. I try to look at every single little angle as we discuss these things.
This is definitely a very intense time that's being spoken of here.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it's so intense that Yeshua himself is trying to give us this little bit of information to tell us, watch out, because they're going to try to say that I'm over there or the Messiah's over here. And he says, don't believe him. That's simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't believe him. And then he says, why? Because there's going to be false messiahs and false prophets, and they're going to even show signs and wonders. So people are going to be saying, look, there he is, right? But he's saying, don't believe him. Now this is the time when you would most expect to see the Messiah, because they're going to say, look at all these things, this has to be the Messiah, right? Look, this has to be him. And this guy over here, he's doing everything that Yeshua did. Look, he's doing he's raising the dead. He's healing people, and it's the exact same thing. But guess what? The ones who believe him are going to be the ones who haven't been educated enough. The ones who, I've said this before, they're going to be the ones who, they're not the most learned. They haven't even read this chapter maybe. they're gonna have an idea of what is going to happen, and maybe other people are spreading this poison also, that's where the Messiah must be. And they're going to even probably say that, look, this has got to be him because he's doing everything according to the Word. And they're going to probably even use the Word to include everything. But he says, don't believe.
Yeah, there's going to be some pretty noticeable signs associated with this coming. And he's coming in the clouds of heaven. He's not going to be in, some guy's backyard, or someone's basement. He's come on the sky, the clouds of heaven. We also
He's not
see,
even coming to government building.
And we also see that there's another prophecy that says that the way that the sign will be as lightning, flashes from one side of the heaven to the other. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. You'll know it'll be so obvious that you won't have to have a secret meeting to go find him.
It's going to be real difficult for those of us who know this.
Mm-hmm.
To see the deception and to try to warn people, to try and expose what's going on.
Especially with the false miracles that are going to be going
Oh
on.
yeah, it's going to be really hard because there's going to be some people who are going to be like, I don't care what you say, I believe this. You know, be like, no.
They didn't. Well, the problem wouldn't be that they didn't study the Word. They don't know these things, and they don't have this foundation. And so when they do see miracles, they have nothing to
not gonna be-
contradict what they're seeing, what they're believing.
It's just not going to be a fun time for those of us who believe.
What do you think about the comment where it says abomination of desolation, standing where it should not be, and then in parentheses, let the reader understand? That I was reading that. It's like,
It's gonna have to do with the Beit HaMikdash, right?
Yeah.
That'll be
Yeah, the abomination that makes desolate, and that's spoken of in the book of Daniel.
Messiah that goes to make a sacrifice
Yeah.
or something like that.
And I think that there was foreshadowings of that in history. I think that with the Maccabean revolt, the same exact phrase is used in the book of Maccabees, and it refers to this these idols that are put in there, and even the connections,
Zeus, sacrificing pigs.
Yeah, exactly, all that. So, and
I thought it was interesting where it said, standing where it should not be.
yeah, oh, it shouldn't be there. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep. And then we have when it talks about again fleeing. It says verse 17. What a terrible time it will be for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that it may not happen in the winter. And that's probably because you don't have much preparation and you don't want to go back to get anything. And then we have another.
not even your coat, so it'll be cold.
Yeah, and then we have another parallel passage in the book of Matthew where it gives a little bit more information. In chapter 24, verse 19 and 20 says, "What a terrible time it will be for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that you will not have to escape in winter or on Shabbat." So these are times that you're not prepared to move anywhere. Obviously in the middle of winter you're not going to be ready for a long trek in the mountains. At least most people won't. And Shabbat, but that also shows the significance significance of Shabbat in the future. If Shabbat has been done away with, why would he say this? Why would he say that we should pray that it shouldn't happen on Shabbat?
We moved it one day.
Yeah, but if your Shabbat's on Tuesday, and then I'll be going on Tuesday, and then your Shabbat's on Sunday, I'll be going on Sunday.
We all know which one's Yeshua's Shabbat was.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure he's talking about that one.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm sure people,
Oh yeah, I've heard it all.
One thing just to be, aware of is that when he talks about the abomination of desolation in Daniel, in both references in chapter 11 and chapter 12, he's talking about when the regular sacrifices have been done away with. So if they rebuild the temple and they start having regular sacrifices, and then those are done away with, whatever takes place of it is going to be the abomination of desolation. So
It's going to be the anti-Messiah going in and taking over.
oh yeah, so that does tell us that there's going to be a temple built again. Probably not going to be the one that we want to see, but they're going to start the regular sacrifices again, and at that time they're going to stop. Something's going to cause them to stop. Who knows what's going to cause it to happen? But then the abomination will happen at that point.
I think that we're going to see it happen almost identically to what we saw at the Maccabean revolt, with Antiochus Epiphanes. I think that was a foreshadowing. I think Yeshua even refers to the event, and as he's talking about these things, he's talking about this event that happened, that is referred to in the book of Daniel, and it's important to understand that the Jewish people, during that time that it was happening, thought that this was a fulfillment of the book of Daniel. And even to that day, Yeshua was talking about it, when he's talking about that, their minds are going back to the Hanukkah event. Mm-hmm. But there's in that prophecy of Daniel, there is a part that had not been fulfilled. That was, I think, pointing to something that was going to happen in the future. So I think this is all a foreshadowing. So I think that we're probably going to see this temple. It's going to be eventually going to be taken by the nations. This leader, this anti-Messiah, he's going to be, contrary to what some people want to say, he's not going to be Jewish. There's some anti-Semitic doctrine that tries to make the anti-Messiah out to be Jewish. If you've ever heard that one before. But he's like it was with Antiochus Epiphanes. You're going to have him be a Gentile ruler, and he's going to go in, and he is going to sack the temple. He's going to kick out all the righteous priests, and he is going to set up his own system, and he's going to set, basically himself up as an idol.
So we need to build the temple for any of this to even happen.
Yeah. So I don't well, it very well may not be the Ezekiel temple. It will be.
It'll be some kind of temple.
It'll be God's temple still.
Yeah, it's got to be some temple there.
Just
for
as
all
the
this
second
to happen.
temple
You can't defile a temple that's not holy in the
was
first
not,
place.
the future temple.
Great effort.
Nonetheless, Yeshua called it God's house. As far as
Well, we got that already.
Nope.
Yeah.
They just disqualified it yesterday.
Did they really? Huh.
That's okay, then I won't come. It has to.
So,
They disqualified it because it had a hair out of place?
Yep.
so a few Shabbats ago, I remember one of the things you were saying is that, people say, hey, how come you're not sacrificing? And that was in the context of, yeah, we don't sacrifice in our backyard because we're supposed to sacrifice in the temple.
Right.
If somebody had asked me that, I would have said, yeah, we're supposed to be sacrificing. We should build the temple, and that's where we should be sacrificing. We're still supposed to be building the temple, right?
There's an outstanding command to always build a temple.
That's right.
The Jewish people, according to the Torah, the Jewish people don't have to wait for anything. And they've tried a few times. They've tried the Russian, the cornerstone a few times to no avail, of course. But, so it'll be in God's timing whenever God allows it to happen. But there's an outstanding command to always build a temple. So without the temple, without the priesthood, it'd be unlawful. But
Wallflower.
yeah, once the leaders of the people of Israel find a way to make it happen, it will happen. And I think that's going to be a huge sign
It'll be nice to
that
see.
things are close.
It'll be nice to
That'll
see
be really
Israel.
confusing for people though, because there's a lot of people that.
That's definitely a big road sign, a big, I don't know what you call that.
And the sign,
road sign or
Messiah
a,
did away with all of
yeah.
that, then
It's
it's
like,
not gonna happen again, and they'll talk
you're
about
almost
it.
there.
A landmark, yeah.
Which I think there's gonna be a
Yeah.
lot of confusion
It'll be nice
for
to
some
see
of the believers,
the land of this
that believe in
country
him,
of
but,
Israel
you know
go
what I mean,
from
it's
a
gonna be kind of
democracy
confusing,
to
like, what's
monarchy.
going on here? I thought
Nice.
Yeshua was the common sacrifice.
Yep, we're looking forward to a mighty good leader.
Okay, go through the garbage.
Yeshua.
Best.
Thank you.
Better.
But as verse 37 says, we need to stay alert. We need to stay alert. If we're going to be ruling and reigning with him, we can't be found sleeping.
Thus, we need to study our Bibles,
And act on them.
spend time together,
Yep.
so that we don't go.
Study and apply, study and apply, study and apply until he comes. Well, should we close?
Okay.
Would you like to close us in prayer today?
Father, our King, we thank you for your word. We thank you for the insight that you give us, glimpses of the future, and being prepared day by day as we reach that. Guard our families. Keep us safe. We ask these things in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Oh, yes, my good son, Brit, is reminding us to pray for Kathleen, since we're all together here. Malkana, we just want to lift up our sister Kathleen to you, Father, and we just pray for her ongoing healing. Father, we also just pray as she's going through a transition, Father, from the assisted living care center that she's in, Father, to her home. Father, we just know that she's going to need special care, Father, and we just pray that you be with Yosef, Father, and that you would somehow use our community to come together, Father, to support her and him, Father, as they make that transition into their home, Father. We just pray that you supply all their needs, Father. I also pray for my brother Yeshua here, Father, for the stomach problems he's having, for healing. And I also pray for Nessa's father-in-law, Father, for the shoulder surgery and the stomach surgery he's having. And also for my dad, Father, for the cancer cells they found in his throat. Just pray that you would just heal him. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.
Hey, for Linda. Passing a stone.
And for Linda.
Oh, yes.
She's.
Yes. She's still feeling a lot of pain?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Is she in the hospital right now?
No.
Okay, I heard she went in there, but she...
We went in there
Good night, I texted
Monday
you.
night.
Let's pray for her right now. Kena, we just want to lift up Linda to you, Father. Just asking you would take away this severe pain that she's going through, Father. That you would heal whatever's going on, Father, whatever it is, Father.
Would be kidney stone, Father. Pray that you dissolve it, Father. Anything that has to do with her stomach, we just pray that you take away all her pain, Father, and give her relief and have grace and mercy upon her. In Yeshua's name. Amen.
So,
Was it what we thought it was?
oh yeah, it's a kidney stone.
Okay.
Did it, I thought it passed, did it pass?
They just gave her stuff
Take away
as
the
far
pain,
as
so-
take away the pain and open everything up so it'll flow out easily, but it still hasn't as of.
For crying out loud. 'Cause I
She's still in
texted
pain
her,
tonight.
but it wasn't clear on.
She was telling me last night that she's.
If I'm not here,
She said, you
just
know,
so
I've
you know
had two
that
children.
I
She
am
said, I'd rather go
continuing
through
to study.
childbirth
Wow.
than go through this.
Childbirth
on
stinks.
Psalm
So she's in that much pain,
119.18.org,
it's like-
and they've got some good
They don't have a
studies.
beautiful
I don't know what that
result.
feels
This
like,
one
but
is really
I can
good.
imagine, you know,
It's
I've always heard that's like one of the worst pains.
Goldheartschool.com.
They did
He's a
thing
rabbi,
on,
and he takes the
on
Torah
a
and he
video I
dissects
saw, it was a YouTube video where these guys went in and
And,
they hooked these electrodes up to their stomach,
gold.
and it was making their
Yeah.
abdomen, like all the muscles in their abdomen flex, and it basically it's a simulation of labor. And these guys wanted to do it, they wanted to do it so they could empathize with their wives what it's like to go through labor. And they were like, at the end of the video, they're like, Mom, thank you. If I put you through any of that, please,